I got drunk and slept in the same bed as another guy. What's the right move now to tell my boyfriend? The night was supposed to be a fun distraction, a chance to unwind from the relentless grind of university life. My friends and I had been looking forward to it for weeks, planning every detail meticulously, from the outfits we'd wear to the bars we'd hop between. It was a cold, crisp evening, and as we gathered at my friend Lisa's dormitory, the excitement was palpable. We were ready for a night of laughter, dancing, and forgetting about our looming deadlines. The air was electric as we moved from one bar to the next, the neon lights casting vibrant colors across our faces. The drinks flowed freely, and I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in months. My laughter mingled with the music, my worries dissolving with each sip. It was one of those nights where everything felt perfect, and nothing could go wrong. We danced with abandon, our bodies moving in sync with the rhythm of the music. The crowd was a blur of happy faces, and I felt invincible. The more we drank, the more we laughed, and the more the world around us faded into a distant hum. As the night wore on, the drinks kept coming, and I could feel myself slipping into a haze. My movements became sluggish, my laughter a bit too loud, my vision blurry. But I didn't care, I was having fun, and that's all that mattered. By the time we decided to call it a night, I was barely holding it together. Lisa, always the responsible one, suggested we head back to her dormitory. "You can crash at my place if you want," she offered, but I insisted on going back to my own apartment. In hindsight, I should have taken her up on the offer, but I was adamant. I wanted the comfort of my own bed. A group of us, including a few friends and a guy named Jake, who had helped me with some college assignments, made our way to my apartment. Jake was someone I had only recently gotten to know. We had exchanged a few messages about coursework, and he had always been helpful. There was nothing romantic between us, at least not from my side, and I didn't think much of his presence that night. By the time we arrived at my apartment, the alcohol had fully taken its toll. I barely made it to the bathroom before I started throwing up. It felt like an eternity, and by the time I was done, I was completely drained. My friends helped me to my bed, and I collapsed onto the mattress, my mind a foggy mess. I was vaguely aware of my surroundings, but I couldn't muster the energy to move or speak. I drifted in and out of consciousness, the room spinning around me. At some point, I felt someone lie down next to me, but I was too far gone to react. It was only later that I realized it was Jake. He must have decided to stay and make sure I was okay, but at the time, I didn't think much of it. My mind was consumed by the throbbing headache and the overwhelming need to sleep. I had set an alarm for 6 a.m., knowing I had an important lab appointment the next morning. When the alarm went off, it cut through my foggy sleep like a knife. I barely registered it, but I heard movement next to me. Jake must have heard it too, because when I finally managed to drag myself out of bed around 9 a.m., he was gone. The realization hit me slowly. He had been lying next to me for hours. In the days that followed, I didn't give it much thought. I was too preoccupied with my studies and the whirlwind of university life. Besides, nothing had happened. We had just slept in the same bed, albeit unknowingly on my part. It felt like a non-issue, something that didn't need to be addressed. I had only just started dating my boyfriend, Mark, and I didn't want to complicate things with unnecessary details. Mark and I had a rocky start. I had never been in a relationship before, and it took me a long time to feel ready. We had been friends for a while, and there was always a spark between us, but I needed time. I had things I needed to share with him about myself, things that were private and important. So, for 2 months, we danced around the idea of a relationship, acting like we were together but without the official label. When we finally did make it official, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was excited about the future and the possibilities that lay ahead. We were both 24, young and hopeful, with dreams and plans. We navigated the ups and downs of our early relationship, learning about each other, growing together. And then, the memory of that night resurfaced. It wasn't until recently, when a similar situation happened to my friend Sarah, that the guilt began to gnaw at me. Sarah had been in a relationship for several months, and one night, she went out, got drunk, and ended up sleeping in the same bed as a male friend. Unlike me, she wasn't as drunk and was fully aware of what was happening. She told her boyfriend about it, explaining that they were just friends and nothing happened. Her boyfriend was understanding, but I couldn't shake the feeling that my situation was different. I casually mentioned Sarah's story to Mark one evening, expecting him to shrug it off, but his reaction caught me off guard. "I don't think I could forgive you if you did that," he said, his voice steady but serious. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't anticipated such a strong reaction. Mark was usually so understanding, so forgiving. His words echoed in my mind, making me question everything. Should I tell him about that night? It felt like a betrayal to keep it from him, but I was terrified of his reaction. What if he saw it as a breach of trust, even though nothing happened? The thought of losing him over something so inconsequential was unbearable, but the guilt was becoming too heavy to carry alone. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept drifting back to that night, the memory of Jake lying next to me. I turned to Mark, my heart pounding in my chest. "There's something I need to tell you," I said, my voice trembling. He muted the TV and looked at me, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Do you remember when I told you about Sarah's situation?" I began, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his expression guarded. "Well, something similar happened to me, but it was before we were officially together." I could see the wheels turning in his head as he processed my words. "What do you mean?" he asked, his tone cautious. I explained everything, the night out with my friends, getting drunk, throwing up, and Jake lying next to me in bed. I told him how I had been unconscious, unaware of what was happening, and how I had only realized he was there when I woke up. I could see the hurt in Mark's eyes, the betrayal he felt even though I had done nothing wrong. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked, his voice tinged with sadness. "I didn't think it was relevant," I replied, tears welling up in my eyes. "Nothing happened, and it was before we were even together. But after what you said about Sarah, I felt like I needed to be honest with you." Mark was silent for a long time, his gaze fixed on the floor. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle to reconcile his feelings. Finally, he looked up at me, his expression softening. "I appreciate you telling me," he said quietly, "but it's going to take me some time to process this." I nodded, understanding the weight of my confession. "I just want you to know that I love you, and I would never do anything to hurt you," I said, my voice breaking. "I should have told you sooner, but I was scared." Mark reached out and took my hand, his touch comforting. "We'll get through this," he said, his voice filled with determination. "But we need to be honest with each other, no matter how difficult it is." In the days that followed, there was a tension between us, a lingering doubt that hung in the air. But we worked through it, talking openly about our feelings, our fears, and our hopes for the future. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I wondered if we would make it. But our love for each other was strong, and we were determined to come out the other side stronger than before. Looking back, I realized that honesty and communication are the foundations of a strong relationship. It wasn't about the mistake I made or the fear of losing Mark. It was about trusting each other enough to share our vulnerabilities. It was a lesson learned the hard way, but one that ultimately brought us closer together. As I sat with Mark on the couch, holding his hand, I knew that we were stronger for it. Our love had been tested, but it had endured. And in the end, that was all that mattered. That evening, as we sat on the couch in silence, the weight of my confession hung heavy in the air. The TV cast flickering shadows on the walls, but neither of us paid it any mind. Mark's hand in mine was a lifeline, grounding me in the moment, even as my mind raced with doubts and fears. Mark's face was a storm of emotions. I could see the hurt, the confusion, and the struggle for understanding. He was always the steady one, the rock in our relationship, and seeing him so unsettled was almost unbearable. "I just don't understand," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me, even if it was before we were together? Why keep it a secret?" I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat making it difficult to speak. "I didn't think it mattered," I said, my voice trembling. "At the time, it felt like such a non-event. Nothing happened, and we weren't even officially dating yet. But when you said you couldn't forgive something like that, I realized I needed to be honest with you, even if it was hard." Mark sighed deeply, rubbing his temples as if trying to alleviate the tension building there. I get that, he said slowly. But it's not just about what happened. It's about trust. If we're going to make this work, we need to be completely honest with each other. No more secrets. I nodded, tears spilling over despite my best efforts to hold them back. I promise, I said, my voice breaking. No more secrets. I love you, Mark. I never want to hurt you. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly. I love you too, he whispered into my hair. And we're going to get through this, together? In the weeks that followed, we took small, careful steps to rebuild the trust between us. We spent more time talking, really talking, about our fears, our dreams, and our insecurities. It was hard at times, dredging up old wounds and exposing them to the light, but it was necessary. Each conversation brought us closer, each shared vulnerability a step towards healing. We started making more time for each other, prioritizing our relationship amidst the chaos of our busy lives. Date nights became sacred, a time to reconnect and remind ourselves why we fell in love in the first place. We laughed more, finding joy in the little things, like cooking dinner together or taking long walks in the park. One evening, as we were walking hand in hand along the river, Mark stopped and turned to me, his eyes filled with a warmth that made my heart skip a beat. You know, he said softly, this has been one of the hardest things we've ever gone through. But I think it's also made us stronger. I feel like I know you better now, and I love you even more for it. I smiled, a tear slipping down my cheek. I feel the same way, I said. It's been tough, but I'm so grateful we have each other. You're my rock, Mark. He kissed me then, a sweet, lingering kiss that spoke of promises kept and a future filled with hope. As we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our love was strong, and it had weathered the storm. Months passed, and life continued its steady march forward. We graduated from university, celebrated our successes, and started new chapters in our lives. Through it all, we remained committed to each other, our bond growing stronger with each passing day. We learned to navigate the ups and downs of life as a team, supporting each other through thick and thin. One summer evening, as we sat on the balcony of our new apartment, watching the sun set over the city, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The past was behind us, and the future stretched out before us, filled with endless possibilities. I turned to Mark, my heart swelling with love. I can't imagine my life without you, I said, my voice filled with emotion. He smiled, his eyes shining with affection. And you never have to, he replied. We're in this together, for the long haul. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Our journey had been anything but easy, but it was ours. We had faced our fears, confronted our past, and come out the other side stronger and more in love than ever. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart. Life, as we had learned, was full of unexpected twists and turns. But with Mark by my side, I was ready for whatever came our way. Our love was a beacon, guiding us through the darkest of times and lighting our path towards a future filled with hope, joy, and endless possibilities. And for that, I was eternally grateful.